A little bit about me. My name is Violet. I am from India. I grew up in Qatar and I studied in India for 5 years. And I lived there for 7 years. Um, and I was studying architecture. I graduated in the middle of the pandemic and I was planning to come here, but things were all up in the air. And during that time, it was a very sort of fortunate period where I got to collaborate with my mentor. And his name is Nimish Vora, and he was in touch with another friend who like also studied architecture. Like all of these people, like Nimish also studied design, and yeah, so they were all sort of in that circle of designers and architects. And so Sivanand, who graduated from SPA, he had started his own design firm, which was basically providing creative craft solutions for a lot of um, sort of government projects. So like museums and like agricultural institutions and stuff like that that wanted to have like a very beautiful facade and have like stonework and have murals. That's what his organization did, and they're called Collective Craft. So another aspect of what the artisans do, apart from stonework and modeling sculptures and stuff like that, they also make painted folios, and they're based out of Orissa. So the particular style of art that is has been practiced since ancient times there, it's called Patachitra. Um, and chitra means drawing, sketching. Pata generally refers to like a sense of fabric, cloth, a canvas. So it basically just refers to the style of painting that they used to do. And a lot of this painting style originated around the Jagannath temple. So it's a lot of divine um, painting that they do about Vishnu, about Jagannatha, basically about the gods. And um, as with a lot of miniature painting styles, like there's so much metaphor, so much poetry, and basically this organization had come to us with a proposal that they wanted to illustrate the Geet Govind. It's a 12th century poem by Jayadeva, and it's about the erotic love of Radha and Krishna. So it's a really beautiful poem, and it's sung in songs. It's basically a song. Um, and wow, I'm just thinking that's so appropriate today, like just after Valentine's Day, that I'm talking about this. But yeah, so yeah, I think we can get into some of it. I was hoping to share my screen.
And then you should, there we go.
Yes. So basically around the 18th or 19th centuries when they started painting this particular song. So it had existed as a song. There were probably local adaptations that people had done otherwise, but particularly as a movement in Patachitra to illustrate the story was done around this time. And these are miniature paintings, like 23 by 15 centimeters. I'm not sure how much that is. It is in American measurements, but um, probably 11 by 7 inches or something like that. And basically, they used to do one illustration per verse, which means they took one verse, they were making a whole painting based off of that. And our approach was a little different because, which I will go into later, but basically, there are 13 chapters or 13 songs in the Geet Govind, and we illustrated like one folio for each of those songs. So my drawings and my layouts were a lot more sort of based off of this style. This is also very dense, but mine had more layouts, more paneling, and you'll see some of my style come into that as well. It's not technically Patachitra because yeah, I was still learning about this style, but definitely inspired from that. So this is basically the style. I'm not sure if I can. Oh, great. This is better. Yeah, this is the original style of the painting, and in this it says, why doesn't Krishna come to me right now? She asks me, her friend, as if I'd know somehow. This is so basically Radha is down here contemplating, she's sad, she's the story basically goes that, if you know the story of Radha and Krishna, like Radha was sort of like a very special partner of his, but he was a little bit of a, I'm not sure what the word is, but sort of very flirtatious, and like there were all these gopis and all the friends, all the cowherds of the village, and everyone had a piece of him. It was because he's God, and like everybody worshipped Krishna, but he was also so playful and always dancing with the women, and like so Radha is sort of like jealous at this point, and she's sad and she's contemplative, and she's complaining to her friend Saki over here, who comes to Krishna and is like, you know she's not feeling great. She like sort of she's dissing him and being like, you need to take care of her. So there's many different like sort of similar paintings that were done, and picking some of these verses, um and some of the metaphors that they have here are really beautiful, like my sexy lady with your lotus foot, comparing her feet to the lotus, because Krishna also holds the lotus. That's like a symbol of his, that he's holding the lotus, and like he holds it close to his face. The sensuality of holding the flower close to your face, and how that sort of goes into also the rivals of your feet. These flowers make this well made bed a mess. So yeah, very sensual story. Um, these are some older styles. This is a different style, which was done more on palm leaves, which is a very different way of doing it, because they carve the design into the palm leaf, and they sort of take an ink and wash the ink over the carving, and it sets into the painting. Um, yeah. And some in color as well, with some of the verses on the side. This is in written in the Orison script, uh, of the language that they speak there, which is more similar to Bengali. Um, and the original was in Sanskrit, but it's been translated into several different languages, including Hindi. And some of the translations that we see in English were done by um, you know, Western enthusiasts who went and studied this poetry and were able to translate it. Um, but yeah, this is also a really beautiful painting from this style, just of the scene of everyone together, and that's Radha and Krishna over here on the left side by the bower, with all the lotuses in the water. So you can see a lot of this imagery of, like, it's very specific imagery of the types of plants and the types of foliage that was there at the time. It's amazing that they captured all of this, and so many different styles also of depicting Krishna, which is brilliant. And yeah, they show him over here because there's some verses where Radha is also describing the mythology of Krishna, and going into the poetry of describing who he is, and like, oh great Krishna, the one who destroyed so and so demon. Um, yeah, and they also have these sort of very detailed layouts where they have like sections through the city, and they're depicting the architecture. So we were trying to be inspired by all of these styles to bring in all of this detail and storytelling into the layouts that we were creating. which would sort of act as the basis for the artisans to paint the folios. Because I think, I mean, it would have been a different project if they had taken it on themselves, but there are many different artisans and they mainly wanted to do the painting. So we were doing the job of sort of understanding the poetry, translating that into imagery for it. Um, but yeah, different, and we sort of collected these different depictions. Like if we're going to draw a snake, what are the different styles of doing it, the styles of the scales and everything. Um, yeah, this is one of the end scenes where after a night of lovemaking, Krishna's dressing his lover, and yeah, yeah. So that's these are the original styles, and basically, oh, this is annoying. I'm not. Uh, a little bit more about the process is that we decided to do a sort of thumbnailing process. I mean, I'm calling it thumbnailing now because I've been studying comics for 2 years. But at the time, we were just, these were like the rough layouts or the drafts. So on the side, you see a summary of basically what that particular song is talking about. And this is the introduction, which is sort of like talking about their past. And Nanda is basically a sage who is, taking care of Krishna. And he says to Radha in this poem that, oh, it's getting dark and Krishna is young and afraid, so take him home through the forest. And as they pass through the forest, they make love to each other, and that's like reminiscent of their first time, their first union. And you see sort of Jayadeva on the right side, and I did a sort of mirrored layout of like the poem going like, from left to right, and then at the bottom as well. So mirrored to Jayadeva is Kamadeva, who is the god of love, basically Cupid. Um, yeah, so you'll see this Cupid character appear several times in this story because they keep referencing the god of love, obviously. Um, and yes, so here it is springtime, rather sort of walking through the forest, and everyone is in the spirit of love. It's like the birds and the bees, everyone's like in a very sensual emotion. They're talking about the wind, about the water, the different animals, and the way that the plants are growing. The way that they're blossoming and the sensuality of that. And this was like an alternate layout that I had done for it, where I was getting into more details with the drawing. Some of the stuff I was doing digitally, all of these layouts I did digitally, but most of the actual drawings of the folios that I did by hand. They were like kind of vinyl size, like 12 inch by 12 inch. Um, Yeah, and this is Krishna frolicking with the gopis, which is a uh, very common painting that is done in like many different styles across India. It's called the Rasa Leela, or the Krishna Leela, which is also developed into like dance forms and stuff, where it's basically like Krishna depicted like many different times, and he's like dancing with the gopis all in between him, because like every gopi gets to hold Krishna's hand, every gopi gets to dance with him. um, Radha misses Krishna while he dances with the gopis, so she's in the center over here, and these are all the gopis dancing around, and he's ecstatic, he's joyous, and she's sort of reminiscing, not reminiscing, but sort of having like these sad fantasies about all the ways in which he's pleasuring his other lovers. Um, and so in hearing all of this, Krishna, or actually just, while he's with the gopis, like he has a moment where he's stricken with love for Radha, and he leaves them, and he also misses her. Um, And yeah, I think there's a line over here where it talks about how her brow, like her brow being angered, is like a bow and arrow that's shooting at his heart. So some really beautiful metaphors that they have there. This was I think I finished this piece earlier to sort of be like, oh, this is maybe the style that we'll be going into. And we had plans at the time of maybe screen printing this and turning it into a sort of like kind of like a children's storybook style printed form. But unfortunately, we never got around to that, which is very sad. But this is the sixth folio where I think I showed you guys similar versions of this. As you can see, it's inspired by the partition thrust styles. That this one's very directly inspired. For a lot of the other pages, there was a lot of creative work that I was doing, um, imagining some of these things on my own. But it was nice to have sort of a more clear reference for this one. And in this, Saki is sort of describing the many different ways in which Radha is tormented. And so that's what's depicted in the petals around Krishna and Saki. Um, and the snake sort of depicting like her sorrow and her suffering. Um, and so this is Radha imagining Krishna with the gopi, imagining all the ways in which this gopi is, that she has nothing to worry about because she's with the greatest lover, Krishna. And and then finally Krishna comes to see her, and he's like, I'm sorry, I really want to be with you. And then she's like, no, you're just get out of here, I don't want to talk to you, you um and then he comes back and he asks for forgiveness. This I had done this in a sort of different style because we were trying to see if we wanted to do more horizontal layouts and how we would fit the text in. Um and I think I did draw this traditionally, and some of the coloring was done digitally, and it added some texture digitally. um and so Radha is satiated from this, and she prepares to meet him. So this is like her sort of like appearing at the entrance of his bower, and being very shy to see him, and like he sort of like coaxes her to come in. um and this is them making love. Again, I did this in a different style, more horizontal, because we were trying to experiment with some of the layouts. And yeah, and this is similar paintings that I showed you before of the day after, where he's dressing her up, and she has the remnants of the marks that he left on her body. And yeah, all the sensuality of that. So these were the layouts. And then if I can share with you the finally, oh, we have so little time left. I thought I would I would have to say more, but um, sorry to be taking up more of your time, but it's a really beautiful poem that I'm very passionate about. So
It's only about 5:51 here.
yes.
Um,
Oh wait, I do have another half an hour. That's true.
yeah,
Okay.
at least. I mean, we try to make sure
I
everybody
thought
gets
I
an
was I
hour.
thought I was too. Yeah, I also wanted to have some time for you guys to ask me some questions if you wanted.
Could I
So
mention
can you see
something? If
my
any of
screen?
you can see her Facebook page, she has some beautiful, beautiful artwork up there too. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I also
lovely
I have a
stuff.
website and an Instagram. So yeah, I can share that as well with you guys.
Perfect.
Um, yeah. So this is these are the folios that I finally designed. Some of the work, I think I did some digital mirroring in some parts, and some of it is a bit incomplete because we had plans to sort of finish the inking and then do some digital mirroring for some of the more repetitive layouts. Just because I was spending a lot of time on this, but it was a really amazing process. So yeah, the tamala trees, all of the plants that are depicted are most of them are very specific plants from the time. And yeah, by the banks of the river Yamuna. So this is by the Yamuna River, next to the Ganges in North India, where love's games abound plentiful as the wind and reeds beckon stray lovers. So does Jayadeva sing, beckoning you, dear audience. So yeah, a very descriptive poem of inviting the audience into the space of love, into the space of intimacy. Um, yeah, a lot of this is sort of the difference with the with our process. Like there were a lot of specific details, and I tried to include as many of those details in the metaphors and imagery that I was doing, just because that was fun for us to explore. But also it let us do these sort of very detailed panel layouts, and we were trying to be inspired by obviously the Patachitra style as well, but there were some things where we were inspired by um, like sari patterns, temple forms from Orissa, trying to relate things to the culture there. So like the sandalwood mountain caresses clove creepers, so the clove creepers with the bees around them, and we have the clouds sort of caressing them. And so Kama torments every heart, so that's the god of love that you see on the bottom left. And he rides a parrot, and he's got these particular flower petals, and those are like the arrows that he has in his arrow container thing. I don't know what it's called. um
It's called a
yeah,
quiver in English. So
the
does
quiver, the
quiver.
quiver,
Yes,
yes,
you're quick.
the quiver. um the forest bustling with sounds, and a lot of these specific animals that are sort of embraced and in love. And I think um, on the right side you see Krishna riding Garuda, and he's killing an asura in the distance. I think it's probably Rahu or uh, Mura's tormentor. So that's some of the mythological depictions of Krishna. Um, this page, I had taken some time to ink this and digitize it. It's really unfortunate that I didn't get to do it for most of the rest of the pages. But around the time when I had to, I started applying for university here, so it was, yeah, I didn't have enough time to like get it done with. But Krishna of lotus face and lotus limbs, some of the ways in which they describe him, and all of the adornment around him. This is him flirting with all of the gopis, and Radha and Sakhi are like watching him. And she's tormented. She sees him with the gopis and she's feeling jealous. Um, so it says Madhu's killer. These are like different names. So for basically for all the gods we have multiple names for them. Like Shiva, for example, you will hear him be referred to as Mahadev, Maheshwar, Chandrasekhara, for example, means uh, moon head. Like Shekhar means head and Chandra means moon. So that's because he's sort of symbolized with the moon on his head. So some of these references, like Madhu's killer, like that's just a name for Krishna or for Vishnu. And I think Madhu is like this sort of horse-like monster or asura. So that's what's depicted on the top left corner there. And so here, Radha is having secret fantasies of lovemaking with Krishna, and that's what's depicted in the corners of how she hopes to be with him. And all around, he's dancing again with the gopis and and they're all playing music. They have all of this beautiful finery that they're wearing. Um, this was one of the pages that was inspired by uh, sort of like some of the textile designs that they have, like sari patterns and stuff like that. Um, so in this one, he's leaving the gopis and he's brooding. So uh, that's him. I think on the middle right side, it's him by the river reminiscing about her and his, he's crying and like hoping that he can see her soon. Um, and yeah, you've seen this one. Some details of Radha's suffering. Um, she's seeking things that would cool her heart because she's sort of in a fiery jealousy and she's in so much pain. Um, Sort of like this very exaggerated, dramatic storytelling of how sad she is. Her best friend is going to him, being like, she's so sad, like, she's suffering completely, like, you need to come and placate her. Um, and there's also like other depictions here where they depict the love god as a tiger, um, and saying that Radha herself is a doe, that she's a deer, and love is like a tiger that's like ensnaring her, that's like harming her, where like love itself becomes this sort of like where like the god of love is compared to the god of death, which is really interesting to me. Um, and you can see that here again in the top right corner. These are some of the symbols of death, where because Yama rides a bull, and the bull is like the symbol of death, and she's like drowning. She's drowning in love. She's drowning in sadness, and like a snake is coming to bite her foot. Like she's so uh, perturbed by her situation. Um, and this is her fantasy of imagining the other woman, the other girl, and describing her hair and describing her body in very specific details, and talking about the way in which she would be making love to Krishna, that she has her foot on his chest as he worships her back. um, and so through the night she struggles waiting for him, and this is the moment where he comes to see her, and she's so scorned by all of the jealousy and the anger towards him that she tells him to go away. And at the bottom it depicts another mythological aspect where basically when Krishna was younger, there was an asura. So the asuras are basically, they're considered demons. It's sort of problematic in some ways if you go into the history of these things, because there's some actually like Ravana, for example, in the Ramayana, like he's considered like an asura or a demon, but in Lanka, the Ravana is actually venerated as God. So some of these people were very affluent, political figures or kings, and they were just maybe questioning the authority of Hinduism in some way, and like they transform these stories into like be like, oh, depicting them in a negative way. But essentially, she's a demon, and when he's a child, she comes to um, probably cause some kind of trouble, some kind of havoc, and she feeds him her breast milk, and he's so powerful because he's God, and when he sucks her breast milk, he sucks the life out of her. Um, so Radha in this moment is sort of dissing him, being like, "Oh, the way that you sucked the life out of that demon woman when you were a child, you're the same way. Your ways haven't changed. You're just sucking on the teat of every gopi that you find." In such an unsatiated manner, like nothing will ever satisfy you, kind of thing. Um, and these layouts were also yeah, this was the one that was inspired by like temple forms. Orissa has some amazing temples. If you haven't visited there, I would highly recommend. I come from a state where we have amazing temples as well. Karnataka, Halebeed and Belur are some of the most fantastic temples that I've ever seen. And they, along with that, also the ones in Orissa, they have this sort of very, they don't follow the usual form of just like the rectangular plan with the Gopuram. They have a very sun form, like it's like a jagged like mandala form of the temple, and it's just fantastic because it provides all of these walls where there's this intense sculpture. So like Orissa also has these very beautiful sculptural temples. So as night falls, once again, Krishna once again approaches Radha and begs for forgiveness. So this is him coming back to her and placing her foot on his head and begging her to take him back and saying, "Oh, you're the only one for me. Like, please take me back." Um, and sort of wooing her at the same time. He's like, "I'm, let me kiss you better," kind of thing, and complimenting her. And so this is the moment when Radha's like, "Oh, all right," like she's so in love with him that she's like, no, I'll come back to him. And she's all dressed up, and Saki is bringing her to the bower, and she's shy to go in, and like all of the different depictions of the way that they're feeling love for each other. um, and this is the moment where Radha and Krishna reunited make love. um, some of the details of this are really beautiful, where it's like she feigns scratching her chin to hide her smiles. Like that's sort of like a very coy action. Some of the things that are depicted in sort of like feminine sensuality and masculine sensuality that he gets across through his poetry very well. Some things are really lost in translation when it comes into the English. It's very different when you read it in Sanskrit or when it's sung in Hindi. Um, he removes the garments that separate their bodies, sort of, talking about how excited they are for each other, that even the garment that is between them is too much space between them. Um, and yeah, this is the one of the last pages where uh, the morning after, the sort of lovemaking that leads into the morning after, and he paints lac on her breasts. I think that's like maybe a sort of fragrance that they put on themselves. And um, she then asks Krishna, her hero, master of 64 arts, maybe talking about the Kama Sutra, but just talking about like his lovemaking prowess in general. And all more metaphors here of likening her coal to the glossiness of the bees, and braiding her hair to rival peacock feathers, and that's why the peacocks are depicted in the middle in an act of lovemaking.
Could I
Um,
note something here really quickly?
yeah,
The
sure.
figures in the middle,
Hmm.
they very much remind me of the style of Etruscan sculpture.
It's sort of Greek
Yeah. They
in a
look
way.
they have the look of the tribes that were in Rome before Rome. It's just you see
Yeah,
I don't know if they
I
affected each other or but they do, don't they look Etruscan?
I think I must be influenced by a little bit of everything. There's like comics styles in this, and I was trying to be inspired by Patachitra, but I didn't want to stick too closely to it. But there are some similarities in the way that they depict some of these faces, like this very
Mhm.
like straight lines, like very clear like lines that they're drawing. And that sort of like almost repetitive style of drawing them. But yeah, I do see a sort of Etruscan style, as you say. I
It's
never
beau-
noticed that before.
Your line work is so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, all of this is done in pencil on paper for the most part. I think only
Oh
the
my God.
the sixth folio was the one that was mostly digital.
I was just going to ask you what you did, and those are, I think, the most beautiful pencils I've ever seen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, and this is the last page, where it's just a moment of Jayadeva saluting both Radha and Krishna, sort of signing off on the song and, paying his respects to the gods that he worships. And that's why they're in this sort of temple form and depicting, like all around it's depicted the Dashavatara, um, which are basically the 10 forms of Krishna, of Vishnu, essentially, that in every age he will be manifested into a sort of a human or an animal form, and basically deliver humanity from evil. Um, and that's why in this age, this is the final age. The last stage was Buddha, so he was Buddha. And in this age, he's supposed to be Kalki, and Kalki comes riding on a horse that's depicted in the bottom right. Um, yeah, but yeah, that's all of the storytelling that went into this, and yeah, it ends with, and so goes the treatise Gita Govinda by Jayadeva, who worships at the feet of Padmavati. So Padmavati is actually his wife. So it's possible that he sort of wrote this song as an erotic song for his partner, but it's depicted through the love of Krishna and Radha, which is sort of the amazing folk nature of this story. Like that's sung by lovers across India to each other, where they relate themselves, they liken themselves to the gods making love. Um, so yeah. I think that's kind of it. I was talking for a long time. uh, yeah, but this was the project that we made, and then finally in around October of 2021, I visited Orissa, and I spent some time with the artisans in collective craft, and it was an amazing experience just seeing the artisans draw. It's a tradition that's been passed down by apprenticeship through many years. It's kind of sad to know that like a lot of these traditional arts, like it's kind of always been this way, because like even at ancient times, like these were not people who were particularly, obviously some patrons would have supported their artisans quite well, but they've always been from more marginalized backgrounds, and they had this patronage from the temples and from the kings, like back in the day, but now they don't have that. And it's just another one of those situations where people are trying to, like, commercialize their art more to be able to like make money from it. But yeah, you can see these Patachitra folios, like they're very popular like all over India, this kind of art. And like I think you might find some of these styles over here as well. Like there's some handicrafts stores probably in the Bay that also sell these, and some of the palm leaf ones are fantastic because they
Mhm.
do this amazing thing with them where they have like little windows where it'll be like a little circular piece of bark that's like acting as a little flap. So on the front of the bark is a very like, PC little drawing, maybe of like leaves or just a mythological depiction of a god or something. And when you open it up, it has a very erotic, depiction of similar things. And so they make like a whole like folded palm leaf thing which has like little windows all over it that you can open up, and they have like secret illustrations underneath them. So yeah, I mean, ancient pornography. It's it's so amazing. Like when no one gets to see porn like that anymore.
It sounds like our advent calendars, but ours come with candy.
Yeah. Oh, that's sweet.
Oh my goodness, can you see combining the two art forms?
That would be
You
so
have the palm
cool.
leaves with the windows, and then you put candies, especially some of
Yeah,
those wonderful Indian candies.
that would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be crazy if we started that? If you guys
I know we
started
should
that,
start that.
you should
I'm
start
I'm
that. It
I'm
would be
super
so
interested.
great.
Or maybe like an advent calendar, but you open up the windows and it's the drawings that they described.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what you're just saying. We do those drawings and then we also get a candy. So that's you get double the fun.
yeah, 100%. Um, Sorry, just plugging in my laptop, don't mind me. Um, yeah, but if you guys had any questions for me in the next 15 minutes or so, I can also go more closely into some of the slides. I'm not totally I think some of this work is also my mentor's work, so I'm not really into sharing the whole
Mm.
slide, but I mean the whole presentation with you guys just yet, because I
Well,
would have to ask him about that.
this
But
is going to be going up on YouTube. So of course you will have considerations of whose
oh yeah,
rights
that's
they
that's
are.
that's
So
totally
you're
fine.
good. You're all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that shouldn't be a problem. The other thing is we of course have professionals here and we all have, I know Dale, have you got a question first?
Well, I was going to ask, what's the eventual project? Because these look like a work in progress.
Yeah, these were a work in progress, so we were hoping to maybe finish inking these and then turning them into a screen printed book. And
O-
it would be a book with the poetry on one side and with the illustrations on the
Mm.
other
Okay,
side.
okay,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yes, that's
so
that's what I thought it
but
was going
the
towards. Yeah,
other project that it was linked to was that the artisans in collective craft, they made folios based off of these. I'm not sure if they ever finished them, but they were in progress at the time when I visited them. So
okay,
Well, like I
yeah,
was saying, we're professionals here, so we always have questions about how do
yes,
you market. So of course we have all come from many of us have come from backgrounds where it was pre-internet.
yes.
And so I think we'd all like to know if what you're doing both with traditional marketing and with internet, like Patreon or something like
Hmm.
that. I don't know what your access is there, but I know we'd all be interested in it.
I guess at the time, so this was a few years ago, and it's a project that sort of got shelved a little bit. But at the time, we were planning to go through a book publisher who had done similar work with screen printing, and
Mm.
they had worked with artisans who were also doing similar styles, like sort of like a Patachitra style. And they had already released like a couple of books. So we were sort of going to go through them to get it published, like in traditional publishing.
Mhm.
But I don't think we had really thought of online marketing all that much. It was more something where, we wanted to be more hands-on with the whole process, and
Right.
we were talking to screen printers and trying to get quotes and wanted to be involved in the screen printing process as well. So yeah,
Well, that's the thing about when I talk about something like Patreon, you can of course be completely traditional, but
yeah,
Patreon is just a marketing method to let people share in the process, see what you're doing, donate. In Patreon, people pay like $1 a month or $20 a month. It
yeah,
depends on what they have or what they have to do. But it would not take away from the traditional process. It would even let people share a project in process. So I was just wondering if, sort of the old technologies and new technologies are hooked up together.
yeah. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I would have loved to suggest that to them at the time, but yeah, that we weren't really considering things in that direction. Also because we were in India, so it's a little different.
Mhm.
But that would have been great because to get like dollar funding for a project like this would have been really supportive.
Yeah, because that's why a lot of people do Patreon or GoFundMe or things like
Yeah,
that. So it's a way of
yeah,
just chronic
yeah, and
marketing.
it's and Kickstarter also.
Mhm.
And it's great because you can also like sort of set it up to be like, we can ship some of the products to like some of the donors at the end of it and stuff like that, and it just gets your work out there.
Yeah. So I think it all sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it's not something that I've gotten into even when I've been here. I should have gotten into it some time ago, but there's different considerations with my visa and how I work with these things. So, but definitely something to consider for sure.
Well, the work is incredible, and
Thank you.
I know that I know this is going to sound odd, but we do even take a look at perhaps the comic book publishing world because that's a different distributorship and deals with art and writing.
Yeah.
And if I could maybe suggest a publisher, it's called First Second. They
Okay.
publish black and white, and they have a bit of an expanded outlook. You're not going to get so much the traditional ideas of what a quote comic book is, but they've got a very funny little logo that they use to. I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to put the chat. Oops, did not mean to share my screen. Hit the wrong button. But if I go over to the chat here, um, it's like if you look at the chat, that's the way you spell their company.
Okay.
The
Oh, for a
colon
second, right.
01 per second. And they have published some amazing books. They do print black and white. That's what they concentrate on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and your pencils are astounding. And
Thank
I
you.
know that anybody would love to see those. I don't, and then that would perhaps be a launch to what might be for color, but
Sure.
for Dark Horse or something like that. But I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting that this, of course, um, the that art form, art and writing together, are very much ancient.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've got these incredible poems, which kind of reminds me of how the Greeks used to treat
Hmm.
the early celebration of Adonis,
Right.
that celebrated the love between Aphrodite and Adonis. And of course,
Yeah.
now know that in at least in the West and the Middle East, before they were split up into different goddesses, the love goddesses were always the war goddesses.
Mm-hmm.
So goddess,
Like Bast.
yeah, yeah, they were the war goddesses, and so Athena and Aphrodite at one time were one person
Mm-hmm.
because people can get into it. Well, as you saw, as you have been demonstrating, people get into a
Yeah.
lot of trouble for love.
Totally. Yeah.
Can I ask, is that specifically about what we would call love, or are there other symbolisms? Is there something like, the coming of spring, or I mean, outside of the portrayal of human romantic and physical love,
Yeah.
or is that the point? That's a celebration.
It's a lot of things. Because they do relate it to springtime and they do relate it to a lot of animals and a lot of the natural sensuality that exists in life. You could say it's kind of about the love of life itself. Like there could be so many interpretations of it. But some of it is also just a sort of divine love, the love that they have for Krishna. Um, and how that sort of supersedes like any other love in some ways. And that's why they keep referencing back to a lot of the mythology. Like that's where they show their respect for him. But he like this is why Krishna is so loved. Because when you talk about the different avatars of or the avatars of Vishnu, there's so many different ones, and even Buddha, um, there's so many different versions of him that are deeply loved. But there's something about Krishna that made him very, like just so loved by the people. Like some of the stories around like his childhood as well are like so depicted in such detail about how he was such a like mischievous figure. So there's just so much poetry and so much mischief around the depictions of like this character. And then when he grows up, he's this very beloved person, and then he leaves his home to like go be a part of like this very large political story that becomes the Mahabharata. you know um So this is all like in relation to that, but taking this like specific moment of like a moment when they were away, a moment of joy, a moment of like of people being in celebration together. So it's about all of that. But yeah, it definitely ties a lot into the human love, but it's never, like it's always been depicted as something that's um like involved and entwined with the love that exists naturally in the world, like so yeah.
Sounds like it's pretty healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that because I think we live in a sort of more conservative society today in India, where a lot of these things are so taboo, but it's like, but when it's depicted in these art forms, it's never taboo because it's about God and it's different. But yeah, this was folk tradition, like the Bhakti traditions and like other folk traditions were a lot more inclusive in who could contribute to them and the way that people talked about their relationship to God, where it was very um, person to person. It was like, oh, I can be angry at God, I can feel jealous, I can feel all of these like strong emotions. Like it's not just one thing, it's not just one way where you're just like, oh, I worship God and he's going to make everything right for me. It's like depicting all of human emotion like in the way that it's connected to divinity, and it's really beautiful.
And the illustrations show it. We have more questions here. Does anybody
Yeah.
have any other input? Well, I would like to thank you for an absolutely gorgeous presentation,
Thank you so much.
and maybe keep us apprised of what you're going to be doing with your projects, and check out First Second. I mean, those black and whites might be something they could do something, but it might be I don't know, maybe the comic book world. The thing is, they have comics in Indonesia, they have in Japan, and everything else.
Yeah.
Um, is this hooked in with a comic book world in India?
I don't think so because I never really thought about this as a comic until I finished making it, and I was like, this is a comic.
Well,
um,
it's a matter of images and words.
yeah, exactly.
Look, I
And
was in the middle of a
storytelling.
I was in the middle of a panel once, and I had pointed out that the Stations of the Cross in Catholicism, because you
Yes.
have pictures and a narrative.
Yeah.
I said, that's a comic strip. And Jack Kirby was there and he jumped up and went, she's right. So you
That's
see,
amazing.
we could
Yeah,
go there, because then you can have input into what there are huge
totally.
comic book publishing networks,
Yeah.
and because they are everywhere.
I think
Um,
I think the thing
but
is
the
that also recently, like comics are something that has been published in-house within India as a more recent thing. You had the Amar Chitrakatha publications, and they did a lot of like this kind of stuff, like mythological storytelling. Like so, when I grew up reading the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, it was always in like comic form, which was so cool. Um,
Wow.
because I mean, like it's like reading the very dense Sanskrit text is not easy.
Oh my gosh. I thought
There's a
about
lot. There's a huge story to it. But yeah, but they. I think recently in the past few years, like while I was there, maybe like 3 years ago, is when Comic Con first had their like Indian in-house publishing, for example. So a lot of the like newer publishers that are up and coming are maybe trying to focus more on like superhero stories, things that are more marketable to a younger audience and things like that. But and the origin of like publishing these kind of folios has always been in like very traditional arts, where it's like detailed things that are like sold in like museums and like art exhibitions and stuff like that. So we were sort of trying to find that bridge like in between both of these things. So I think Tara Books is one of the publishers in India. You guys can check out some of their work. It's and that was the publisher I was talking about that has like it's more of like a storybook style and they have like sort of
Mhm.
individual artists who are designing the entire book, which is kind of what happened here as well. Like all of this
Mm.
work was my work, and not that I wouldn't have minded collaborating with other artists, but just talking about that particular publisher, the way that they were working. So we were hoping to collaborate with them at some point. Um, but yeah, hopefully sometime in the future. It's just a project that's a work in progress still.
Well,
Any
thank you.
other questions that you guys had?
We got everything?
So we're good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. A
you.
wonderful presentation. Thank
Yeah.
you. We're honored.
Yes.
Those are beautiful drawings.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope to do more stuff in this style and bring a lot of the Indian influences that I've had in my work into a lot of the work that I'm doing. So very happy to be sharing that with all of you guys.